855 BC, 3040 AM. In year 4 of the annals of King Shalmaneser III of Assyria, we find that he attacked the city of King Nikdime, whose people filed on ships. Amazingly, archaeologists have found ancient texts at Ugarit that describe the expulsion of the Ionian population with King Nichmed, an old Greek name later adopted by King Nicomedes. Ugarit had been destroyed by the Sea Peoples in the 13th century BC Trojan War, but it had been reoccupied by Ionians, Israelites, for 8th century BC relics have been excavated there. The Ugaritic language was Semitic and very similar to later Hebrew in structure. Again we have the flight of Israelites or Israelite-descended peoples forced to travel westward and northwest. These people had developed a high state of civilization and culture, and now they would flood into the coastal ports of the Ionic states of Asia Minor and bring their knowledge and arts with them. The foundation to the Greek world we have come to know was by these migrations being founded. This was the year 552 since Israel became a nation in 1407 BC, and 400 years after the Danaan founded the Ionian dynasty of Mycenae in 1255 BC. This was 1776 months, 148 years after the throne of David was established in 1003 BC at Jerusalem, and 90 years, 1080 months after Solomon sold Phoenicia 20 cities of Israelites in 945 BC. 1. Ages in Chaos, Volume 1. 3. The Gospel Truth. 853 BC, 3042 AM. Well into the 5th year of King Shalmaneser III of Assyria, he invaded Syria-Palestine and fought against a coalition of armies of Aramaic cities: Damascus, Hamath, Israel, Ammon, Egypt, Phoenicia, and Syria. This was the Battle of Karkar in the Orontes Valley and was a standoff, though in Assyrian records it was claimed as a victory. An inscription of King Shalmaneser III concerning this campaign is the first mention of Israel as an independent kingdom from Judah. This was 12 years before Shalmaneser III would subdue Israel and receive tribute from King Jehu, the son of Omri. At this time, for the past 3 years, Israel and Syria had a peace pact, but in this year the truce treaty was violated, and King Ahab of Israel is killed by Naaman the Syrian. Assyria would invade 5 more times in the next 15 years with only very limited gains. This was 92 years, 1104 months is 552 times 2, after 20 Israelite cities were sold to Phoenicia in 945 BC, and 108 years after the temple was finished in Jerusalem in 961 BC. This counts 108 years into the future to 745 BC, when the Assyrians will deport the Israelites into the east and northeast after they are conquered. 1. History in quotations. 2. Post-captivity names of Israel. 3. 1 Kings, 4 Phoenicians. 850 BC, 3045 AM. This is an approximate date for composition of the Kebra Nagast, a holy Ethiopian text that traces their ancestry back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. A few years prior to this date, the prophet Elijah was instructed by God to return on the way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. In 2 Chronicles 22:5, we learn that Hazael did become king, and Ahaziah went with Jehoram the son of Ahab the king of Israel to war against Hazael, king of Syria, at Ramoth-Gilead, and the Syrians smote Jehoram. This scriptural account is confirmed by the victory stele of King Hazael of Damascus, erected in the city of Dan. Quote, I killed Jehoram son of Ahab king of Israel, and I killed Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, king of the house of David. And I set their towns into ruins and turned their land into desolation. Unquote. This incredible text recognized the 2 kingdoms of Israel and Judah. This discovery coincides with yet another one. 2 wars were fought by Israel during this brief period between 851 to 847 BC. The Book of 2 Kings mentions a war with King Mesha of Moab, now confirmed on the Mesha stele, which reads, quote, Omri, king of Israel, had oppressed Moab many days, for Chemosh was angry at his land. His son succeeded him, Ahab, and he too said, I will oppress Moab. In my days he said it, But I saw my desire upon him and his house, and Israel perished utterly forever. Unquote. The Moabites did not fare well in this war and hated Israel. Mesha survived, and this text probably refers to the crushing defeat Israel suffered under King Hazael of Damascus. 1. Flying serpents and dragons. 2. 1 Kings. 3. History in quotations. 841 BC, 3054 AM. Shalmaneser III of Assyria finalized his dominion over Akkad, Borsippa, Cutha, and Babylon. Also, the kings of the Chaldeans, and in this his 18th year, according to his own annals, he invaded the west again and received tribute from, quote, the men of Tyre, Sidon, and of Jehu of the house of Omri, unquote, and, quote, in my 18th year of reign I crossed the Euphrates for the 16th time, unquote. This was the 120th year of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, founded in 961 BC, and 288 years, 144 plus 144, after 1129 BC, when Assyria took Babylon. This was also the 90th year, 1080 months of the divided kingdom. The Moabite, Syrian, and Assyrian wars prompted another wave of Israelite migrations out of the region and into the waters of the Mediterranean. Through Phoenician trade lanes, there was a constant stream of reports coming into Israel about the ongoings of their kin overseas. Where Israelite descendants were flourishing was no secret, and many headed straight for Cyprus, Iadon, and the coastal cities of the Ionic states, where centuries of Israelite assimilation with locals created the Greek culture we are familiar with today. The sudden appearance of whole complete cultures and civilizations throughout the Aegean, northern Greece, the Mediterranean, North Africa and Spain, as will be shown herein, where no peoples were recorded to be before, were the result of a series of carefully planned migrations from Palestine. Israelites and their descendants were totally surrounding the greatest enemy they would ever know, Rome. This was 414 years after the founding of the Danaan dynasty of Mycenae in 1255 BC. 1. Ages in Chaos, Volume 1. 839 BC, 3056 AM. King Shalmaneser III of Assyria invaded Syria one last time in what was largely an unsuccessful venture. 1 Phoenicians. 827 BC, 3068 AM. After 220 years below the ecliptic, the Joshua Comet Group passes through the inner solar system. 812 BC, 3083 AM. The city of Carthage is planned out and founded in this year on the North African coast, a Phoenician colony of Tyre called Quart Hadasht, or New City. At this time the colony was full of Israelites and people descended from both Phoenicia and Israel. This is exactly 666 years after 1478 BC, when the Chittim, Italia, attacked North Africa, and the Libyans sent Annibal to invade Italia for 18 years. A scenario played out in history again in the Punic Wars between Rome and the Phoenicians of Carthage. Further, this was 666 years to the fall of Carthage by Rome in 146 BC. 1. Origins of Greek civilization. 810 BC, 3085 AM. Syria and Israel again form an alliance and they make war against Judah. King Ahaz of Judah despairs, and God instructs the prophet Isaiah to calm Ahaz, and told him that in 65 years that, quote, Ephraim shall be broken, and that the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria, unquote. This prophecy referred to the end of Israel as a kingdom in 745 BC, when the Assyrians deported the tribes to the far Assyrian frontiers. These unfortunate Israelites would be slaves and vassals, but would later emerge as powerful peoples who would become the greatest enemies of Rome. 1 Isaiah. 807 BC, 3088 AM. According to the famous letter of Alexander written to his mother Olympia that had been widely published long ago, the Greeks counted the origin of the Macedonians to go back 485 years from that of Alexander's death. The letter was published posthumously. To the early Greeks, the Macedonians were outsiders, not even considered Greeks, and their ancient Israeli pedigree will be seen as this chronology continues. This was exactly 600 years after Israel began as a nation in 1407 BC, and this year of the founding of Macedon was 476 years, a period signifying an Israelite institution, before Alexander the Great conquered Persia in 331 BC. The same year Nibiru passed through the inner solar system. This year was 138 years, Phoenix orbit, after Israel sold 20 cities to Phoenicia in 945 BC. And it was the 120th year since Judah fell to Egypt in 927 BC, and the temple treasures were taken out of Jerusalem. 1 Augustine, City of God, Book 12.